had a chance to make it. This week he redeemed himself, got here, and I think he's going to be really focusing, really hard to beat.
And now we've got Rick Steelsmith, Doug Kent up in semifinal number 1. Rick Steelsmith out of Wichita, Kansas, former All-American at Wichita State. One thing we noticed, Randy and Patrick, in the practicing is that Rick Steelsmith was using a couple of different balls, trying to see the reaction of the balls. Did anybody learn anything from Tony Reyes?
Well, I think you're going to see that when Doug Kent gets up. Doug was probably playing deeper than anybody in practice. I just watched him throw some practice shots prior to the start of this match, and he's moved out where Tony Reyes was playing.
Patrick, did you get the sense that the front part of the lanes were drying up quickly this week?
Definitely, especially in the top 16 and the top 8 with the lights on the lanes. The oil was definitely going through transition very quickly.
Let's take a look at after Doug throws a shot from our CATS system to see where his location is. Our CATS is the computer-aided tracking system. There's a bunch of sensors on the gutter cap separating the 2 lanes that gives us all our information, and that information is brought to you by the Kegel Training Center in Sebring, Florida. As you take a look at Doug's road to the telecast today.
One of the most consistent players on the PBA Tour, no question about it.
That's well right of where he was in practice, guys. That was the 16th board, one board left of the 3rd arrow. In practice, he was the 25th, 26th, 27th board. So again, a big move to the right. Okay, so this is where he's playing right now, about the 3rd arrow. And in practice, he was over in here.
Yeah, he's moved over a lot. Let's see if he adjusts.
It's 10 boards with target, and probably, Patrick, wouldn't you say 5 to 7 boards, 8 boards with his feet?
Definitely. Doug is by far one of the most dimensional bowlers out here. He has a lot of facets in his game, and he's not afraid to switch angles and speed.
You know, talking to him last night, he was telling us, Randy, that he watches that first match. A lot of guys will go off to the side and kind of think about what they're going to do. He says he likes to watch because he thinks he can learn something.
Well, Doug's a student of the game, and as Patrick alluded to, you know, he can do a lot of different things. He can roll it up the back and straight and hard. He can hook it with anybody.
Much different look.
And it's completely different than what he's played all week.
Absolutely.
You know, the players have been in all week throwing that little arc or that fallback shot where the ball just kind of lays in the oil and at about 50 feet makes that little turn into the back end and sets up right in front of the pocket. But here's a guy that I think is really turning the corner, Patrick. Rick Steelsmith has worked so hard on his mental game. You know, he's really getting to a point where he's getting very positive about what he's doing.
Absolutely. He's with a certain ball company for a long period of time, and since 1st of January, he's throwing some other different companies' bowling balls, and it's definitely working out for him.
You see how he buries his fingers, and you hear this popping noise. It's something that you don't hear a lot of players do. He buries those fingers for a strike ball past the first knuckle. He says it gives him a really good feel. At the bottom of the swing, you hear that popping noise.
Well, for the past 6 months, it is really starting to come together for Rick Steelsmith. You mentioned it, he's working on his mental game, Randy. He is going to a sports psychologist right now to try to get over the fact that he stands up at the lanes and he thinks about so many different things. He says he's got to quit thinking about a lot of stuff and just get up there and bowl.
Right. Well, when he was struggling, you know, back a couple years ago, he's really started to kind of tear his game apart. He really became analytical. He told me, you know, he just stopped thinking. He just went on instinct and started concentrating more on release and how he was going to throw the ball.
There you go. Well, his loft was better on that, and that's something else he's been working on.
Well, the deeper the players got this week, the more they started to have to fight with that left gutter. And they actually started to loft the ball to clear the left gutter or loft the ball to keep the ball on line, delay the hook. The ball can't hook if it's in the air.
Well, the last win for Doug Kent came in 2000, 4 titles, including the 91 Masters, making his 25th career singles appearance. Owns a bowling center in Newark, New York. Kent throwing that straighter ball. How can a guy, though, with a lot of revs, not throw it fast? Something you guys explain me that.
Well, I talked, Patrick, you know, you can elaborate on this, but I talked to Doug last night, and he said that all he's doing is trying to make his timing later and later, delay his timing. And the way he does that is he delays his push away, keeps him slower and softer so that when he gets to the bottom, he can really unwind on it without throwing it harder.
That seems to be working for him very well. He seems to be able to do whatever he wants to do with slowing his timing down the way he wants to.
Well, the season-ending battle at Little Creek begins March 12th, and once again, your vote will determine the final player in this limited 32-man field. Now, to participate in the voting, all you have to do is go to PBA.com, select the news category on the left-hand side, then click on the Geico Direct Battle Ballot. Link to vote for your favorite player, www.pba.com. Vote on your favorite player. Patrick Allen is one of the 5 players that you can vote on this week. You'd like to go to Virginia Beach, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So would Doug Kent.
Hey, Patrick, tell us how tough is it when you bowl 40, 50, 60 games in a week, playing the deep inside angle, hooking it, doing what you're doing, and you do this the same for 60, 70 games, and all of a sudden you get 4 or 5 practice shots prior to your match, and all of a sudden you're throwing it dead straight.
I think the guys that made the show this week were doing a couple different things. Rick last night was really lofting it in the top 8. And I think the guys that got to the show this week had a lot of different facets that worked for them, and that's why they got here.
So basically what you're saying is that the guys that made it this week can do more than one thing. They're not just one-dimensional. They've got all the tricks, and they're not afraid to use them at any time.
They were using them when they needed shots in the 9th and 10th, and they were doing whatever they needed to do to get there.
Roxanne Steelsmith back in Wichita, Kansas, and Rick was hoping that she and the kids would be able to come down. There's a daughter 7, a son 3, but they're up in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm sure their father's thinking about them right now. That and the fact he'd like to knock all these down. Ooh.
His reaction looks really good inside, Randy.
It does, and if you watch his release at the bottom of the swing, his hand is really up the back and really rolling it, and that's what's keeping the ball on line, gripping the lane, and not getting that Amleto reaction when he gets it a little too far to the right and it just hangs there.
Yeah, his reaction didn't look very good. I think he might have been throwing too weak a ball.
Amleto?
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good call. And I think he was kind of trapped in between not being deep enough and not being far enough to the right.
Exactly.
Now, as Rick Steelsmith finishes up the 5th, he's still 8 pins up on Doug Kent. He's working on a strike in the 4th. Doug Kent, 18 straight 200 games in qualifying.
And then he said the lanes got a lot tougher, and his road to today was making a lot of spares. Beginning of the week, used real aggressive bowling balls. Match play started and went to weaker balls.
He can take the lead by 1. Oh, and he does.
That was the high hard one right there, right down the 3rd arrow. He hadn't been doing that all week.
Now, Sunday at 7 Eastern, Robert De Niro stars as former middleweight champion Jake LaMotta in this hauntingly vivid biography. Black and white cinematography emphasizes the stark reality of LaMotta's violent nature, which virtually destroys him. Don't miss this must-see movie for movie fans. One of the greats. Of course, we're talking about Raging Bull. For more information, log on to ESPN.com.
And, Ron, Kathy Moriarty's in that movie, and she was nominated for Best Actress. And she actually sponsored me about 20 years ago.
Did you really?
Yeah, she sponsored me when I was bowling regionals and local events.
Patrick's looking at you like, what are you talking about?
Honest to God, true story. I met her at the bowling center, and she was there practicing and bowling and having fun, and take a look over at me and said, hey, this guy looks like
he needs help.
He needs help.
Well,